Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our Cool Tool podcast for purposeful disruptions. Today, we'll be joined by a couple of Hoopston area veterans, Mr. Jones and Mrs. Fesser, and also we'll learn a few things about avoiding purposeful disruptions and how we could build the corn jerker spirit here at Hoopston Area Middle School. So, without further ado, let's get started. First of all, it's good to know what the purpose of this podcast is. Our objective and what we really want to learn here is to understand the meaning of the words disruption, data, and environment. Another objective is to identify behaviors opposite to the infraction of disruption. Now, you want to pay close attention to some of these lessons because there will be an assessment after this. As a matter of fact, you'll be able to find that assessment in your Wall of Heroes Google Classroom. You've all been invited. It's something that I really enjoy putting together. So now that we understand the purpose of this lesson, let's get right into it and why we're learning this particular concept. A disruption. You might ask yourself, what is it? This is an important term, so you want to pay close attention. A disruption is identified and defined as an interruption to the classroom learning environment. And we'll hear a little bit from Mr. Jones and Mrs. Fesser about experiences they've had with classroom interruption, purposeful interruptions to the learning environment. Data. Data are facts and statistics collected together for reference or analysis. You see data when it comes to certain concepts like sports. If you're paying attention to your statistics in sports, it's something like home runs, stolen bases, in baseball. In football, it might be passing yards or something like that. Maybe in volleyball, it might be points scored. So the reason we're even covering this is if you look at the pie graph here, we have insubordination is a big piece of that pie, over half, as you can see. And as you know, we've learned a lot about curbing insubordination. But our second highest infraction here at 27.3% is disruption, which we just learned the definition of a moment ago. So that's why we're focusing on how we could avoid those purposeful disruptions. And in the future, we'll also learn how to avoid non-purposeful disruptions. What is the whole idea behind this? We want to create an environment. What is an environment? An environment are the surroundings or conditions in which a person, animal, or plant lives or operates. Our environment in our school is very important to learning. So our learning environment are the surroundings or conditions in which we operate here at school. What type of environment are we trying to build? We're trying to build an environment with the positive corn jerker spirit. You may have heard about the matrix, and those are some of the ways that you can behave and do things in order to build that corn jerker spirit. We want a place that we can be proud of, and we're building that. And that's what we want here. Now we have some interviews that we're going to take a look at with some of our veteran teachers. The first one is a epic interview with Mr. Jones, where he gives an example of a situation where a student may have purposely interrupted a lesson. And he tells what some things that you can do as a student to help support a positive learning environment to build the corn jerker spirit.
The peers literally shutting them down from getting tired of not, they know, the students know that someone is interrupting the class. They're trying to learn. At some point, they will have had enough.
So students can basically take the lead in these situations. Mr. Jones, before we close our groundbreaking interview, could you perhaps give us an example or in general a situation that might have occurred in your classroom where there may have been a student who seemed to be disrupting purposefully, and some of the other students just, let's put it this way, they had enough of it.
Right. So my first year teaching here, I had a class right after lunch, and there was a student at the back who was struggling, and she was also a big personality, right? So one of the days we came back to lunch, and she just started in. And the rest of the lesson was going pretty well, but she kept making her comments and trying to readjust the focus of the class to her instead of the lesson. And I just kind of let it go. I just taught around it, didn't specifically address it. And finally, another student who sat in front of her just turned around and said, "Will you please shut up? He's trying to teach a lesson."
Whoa.
And it stopped it right there because she realized that she wasn't popular in the eyes of her peers. She had become that person who was being annoying. And so she stopped. The rest of the class went on, and it was fine. And the peer took care of it. I didn't have to do discipline or anything like that because I hate to write detentions.
That's right, Mr. Jones. I have noticed that about you.
You don't see a lot.
And that works out very well for all of us. I want to thank you for taking the time this morning, this wonderful morning on Wednesday, just a few days after Thanksgiving, nearing the holidays here. Do you have any holiday wishes for our students before we close?
Hope they're all safe and happy this year.
Nice.
I hope they have a good Christmas.
Yeah. And, I think obviously, we're hoping they have a great Christmas, and I appreciate that. Obviously that student, sounds like that was a very courageous act by that student. Maybe they could have said it in a nicer way, but it might have been a wake-up call. Who knows?
Sometimes the direct approach is the best approach.
I hear that. We might have to have a chat with Miss Fesser.
She's got to feel that.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Jones. All right.
See.
Thank you. And as you can see, Mr. Jones feels very passionately about avoiding classroom disruptions. At Mr. Jones's request, we did follow up with a great interview with Mrs. Fesser, where we'll take a further look at things that we can do to build that corn jerker spirit, and things that you could do as a student if someone is trying to disrupt the lesson and disrupt our learning. All right, ladies and gentlemen, at the request of Mr. Jones, we're here with a fellow veteran of Hoopeston Area Middle School, Mrs. Fesser. How are you doing, Mrs. Fesser?
I am doing well, thank you.
As always. It's always a pleasure, Mrs. Fesser. Excuse me about that one. And I will say, Mr. Jones suggested if there's anyone we need to come to about avoiding purposeful disruptions in the classroom, it would be you as the person we need to come to. Why do you think that is?
Well, probably because he knows that I can shut things down really fast.
Now, let me ask you that. Have you ever can you think of any situations where you may have had to shut it down really fast, quickly, and what that might have looked like?
A few times in my career I've had it happen. Usually it's kids wanting to, sing out or hum or whatever really loudly to get attention from me or somebody else. And one of my responses to that usually is pretty quick of don't quit your day job.
That's a good one right there.
Maybe you need to focus on the homework instead of singing or something like that.
So your response is basically, it sounds humorous, but it's also very direct with them.
I'm the queen of sarcasm.
Well, yeah. I always appreciate a little bit of sarcasm. They say it's humor for the intelligent, so right. I really appreciate that. Well, Mrs. Fesser, like I said, it's always a pleasure. I knew you would have some good input on students to avoid avoiding this type of infraction. Do you have any special, suggestions for our students, or even maybe a holiday message with Christmas coming up here?
Just want to tell them to have a nice, safe break and make sure that you come back third quarter ready to go.
All righty. Thanks, Mrs. Spencer.
Thank you.
And a special thanks to Mrs. Fesser and Mr. Jones for helping us to create this. And we'll keep on moving forward here with this Cool Tool podcast. If you're a teacher, it may be time to pause briefly, take a few minutes to discuss with the students how they can react to another person who is purposely disrupting the lesson. Students, you may ask yourself, what can you do to help to build that corn jerker spirit, and what you can do to simply avoid purposeful disruptions? Well, let me tell you, we've got some things embedded in our expectations, okay? Our values, our corn jerker values. We all know them. We say them every morning: respect, responsibility, and safety. Well, how can you practice respect, the value of respect? One thing, you could follow classroom rules and directions. That'll help to avoid interruptions, and it'll help build the positive learning environment, right? Follow classroom rules and directions. Also, our value, our corn jerker value of being responsible, the value of responsibility. How can you practice that, you might ask? You can follow directions of all staff. That will help. Most teachers have rules and directions and expectations in their class. If you simply follow that, you'll be on the right path to building the corn jerker spirit. As we wrap this up, it's time to test your knowledge, ladies and gentlemen. After this is all over, all said and done, you're going to go to your Google Classroom, the Wall of Heroes Google Classroom. You're going to complete the Combating Classroom Disruptions assignment. I'll be looking for your answers, and I'll be seeing you all in the hallway. Thank you very much. Have a good day.